Hello everyone and welcome to Underwater Adventures with Alex Mirabal. Today we will be talking about the top 10 treasures I have found in shipwrecks. So let's dive into it.
Hey everyone! If you want to watch the video in other languages, you simply click on Settings, go to Subtitles, select the subtitles in the original language, then go back to Subtitles, activate the Translate automatically, and scroll down and select your preferred language. In this case, we chose Spanish, obviously. Thank you so much all, and let's get on with the video.
As you may have seen in my previous videos, I don't really like to talk about money when referring to shipwrecks and treasures, because I consider that every artifact or every shipwreck has a value in the culture and history and archaeology. It cannot be put into money. But one of the questions I get more from my friends and colleagues in meetings or parties or get-togethers is that what is the most valuable thing you have found? What is the most valuable treasure you have found? And they are asking me in terms of money. Nobody asked me what is the most significant artifact from the cultural point of view. Nobody asked me that. So this episode is to please my friends and colleagues, and I will talk about money to answer their questions. So it was hard for me because I have to look up through many old files to see which were the assessments or the appraisals that were done in each of the wrecks and try to put them together. So I hope that you would like it. I will explain now how these appraisals were made and by whom. Normally, these numbers you will see here is not anything that someone came up with. These are appraisals and assessments made by certified institutions, museums, numismatists, experts that are in the conservative side of the values. Normally, people tend to inflate or to explode values of things coming from shipwrecks. Everyone believes that this little bottle will have a very big value in the market. Okay, these institutions and people who make these valuations are people who are experts on that field. They know what they're saying, they count with the intrinsic value of the object itself, but also the cultural value that it will have. So it is a serious and a very conservative appraisal or assessment of the values of this shipwreck.
So do these values, will they include inflation or be adjusted to inflation, or just as they are?
The values we are presenting today are the values I got from them or the company or the team got from them. I haven't adapted anything. So it was the values we got from them at the moment given to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, and some of them are quite old. So it will be hard. I mean, I wouldn't dare to calculate anything.
No, and that's fair enough to keep the accuracy, but maybe just keep in mind for the audience that these values will be much, much higher in today's, if they had been upraised today, I assume.
Well, one thing that we can do is when we put the value in the video, we put the year in which that value was given.
Perfect, let's do that.
So it would make sense.
Yeah.
So, okay. And remember, the vast majority of these artifacts were never sold. So what we are talking are values, because things have values, not prices, values. Because many of these artifacts were never sold. They are in the museums today, thanks God. And they never realized that value. And market is as strange as it is. Some things could be more expensive. Some things could be cheaper. But I want to tell you how this list is made. I have put together the 10 most valuable wrecks with their cargo and their treasure, because there are some more, but I have to start somewhere. And I started in the 1 million mark. There are some others who are under 1 million, some very close, and there are others which never were assessed. So I have no idea what the value could be. So let's start by this list. I will be going from the smaller to the higher, and stay to the end of the video because it may not be as impressive as you can see. Number 10, Cayo Paradiso wreck in Cuba. Okay, this is a wreck that we found. It's maybe not the right thing to say that we found the wreck. The thing that we found in 1987 was its cargo. We were exploring the reef to the west of Cayo Paradiso, the Paradise Key, and we came across a lot of high quality ceramics on the seabed. And obviously what it looked like a plate that could have fallen from a ship nowadays. We pick it up, and then there was another one, and there was a bowl, and there was this. So we started exploring the place, and for like 3 years we were excavating this site and recovering a lot of these artifacts of this English. We end up finding that there was English pottery, still without having seen the wreck anywhere or remains of the wreck anywhere. So we start thinking that the first working hypothesis was that it was not a shipwreck, but it was a ship that stranded in that reef, and they throw the cargo to lighten up the ship, and then the ship left. Okay, that was not the case. After some excavation, after 2 or 3 years of excavation, we started finding the first elements of the ship and the ballast stones, and the study of this pottery, of these ceramics, was ongoing, and the experts find out that it was from Joshua Wedgwood pottery making Staffordshire and in England, and it was of the type of pearlware or creamware. There were 2 types, and the amount of artifacts that we found in that place, it added up almost to 4,000 artifacts, almost all of them nearly intact. So it was a very nice and very beautiful find. It was a little bit puzzling in the beginning because we didn't know, we couldn't put the finger and said it is a wreck, and by many years was known as the Cayo Paradiso wreck, so the wreck in Paradise Key. Nowadays there are more research going on. It has been tentatively identified as the Arrow ship from UK, sunk in 1815 in that area. This was not only the Wedgwood ceramics, but there were also a cargo of wine bottles and a lot of glass objects. You will see they are beautiful, and this is our first wreck in the list. Number 9 is the Passa Pau wreck. I have already made a video about the Passa Pau wreck, a wreck inside the cave, I think is named. This was a beautiful wreck. And the Passa Pau wreck also, it brought, I already mentioned, it was a kind of an enigma because of many different qualities of objects that it had on board, but it had a reasonably small cargo of silver coins. It had these beautiful composite guns from the Dutch. It has this unique astrolabe coated in silver. And the Passa Pau wreck gave us also a very interesting glimpse into a moment. It even had this pocket watch, which was a little bit like a rare find within the wreck, together with the astrolabe, where there were very prominent finds within the wreck. That's why the appraisal, the estimation from the experts about the value of what was excavated in the Passa Pau wreck is also reasonably high in comparison to the little amount of artifacts we found.
So I assume, or from what you're saying, I deduce that they keep as well the rarity of the artifacts into consideration regardless of the amount of them. Must have been one of the first times that they saw a pocket watch in a shipwreck.
Of that date.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why this assessment of these appraisals are important, because they are made by people who can get that into consideration.
Yeah.
It's not a simple math that you said, okay, you have 3,500 coins, silver coins, each of them will worth $150 or so the value of this is this much. No.
Yeah, because the date that they're minted is important, the date of the shipwreck probably is important. Yeah.
Correct. That's why there are numismatists involved and they are experts in each field involved. So they can see from the nature of the artifacts, even if it's the same artifact that you will find in another wreck, why here is more valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that will be number 9 in this list, the Passa Pau wreck, or the wreck inside the cave. Number 8, the Shiman. The Shiman is a wreck that is very dear to me. I already made a video about it because of this exceptionally rare type of coins that is Swedish copper plate money. It was, from the academic point of view, a very important wreck and a very important find. The research on these beautiful coins, I have showed them in the previous video, which is called the biggest coins ever made. It make it very interesting, but at the same time, the museum and the numismatists that were confronted to this rare find, they were delighted to make the appraisal, because you have to have this in mind. Most of these objects are priceless because they are unique. So, because you have to give them some value. They form part of the assets and from the inventory of a company or of an institution, so you have to value them somehow. You cannot have this kind of artifacts or this kind of objects and you are responsible for them and not even having a value. So for them it was a hard task. They were all very happy, and this is the wreck that gets to number 8 in this list of treasures I have found. Number 7, that comes Espadarte. Espadarte, or the swordfish, is a wreck I found in Mozambique in the year 2000. It was either in 2000 or 2001. This wreck, it has everything. It has a beautiful cargo of porcelain that was also probably the first consignment of Chinese porcelain sent from China to Europe. Probably the first commercial consignment. Yeah, there would be academic doubts about it, but it seems to be, if not the first one of the first ones. But at the same time, from the academic point of view, this was a very high quality porcelain. During the next years, the years after 1558, that was the date that the Espadarte sunk, after this year and during the 17th century, China started producing porcelain to export to Europe. So there were more mass productions. In the case of the Espadarte, was transporting, although smaller cargo in terms of amount than other shipwrecks that have been found with Chinese porcelain, but the quality of that porcelain was outstanding. So each of the pieces was a piece of art in itself. Then the Espadarte also have the historical academic importance as well, that part of the whole, large part of the whole survived. So it led to the study of naval construction in the 16th century. It has 2 beautiful bronze cannons. So it was a compound, it was a mix of many things when it got to the point of making the evaluation. This evaluation also included 12 kilograms of gold in form of ingots. It was most probably smuggling, but that, to my personal opinion, they don't really belong to this wreck because they were found slightly away from the wreck. But in the moment, that slightly away meaning because there is another wreck very close to. So my opinion is that these gold ingots came from the other wreck, but in the moment that this appraisal was done, they put them all together, and this is the number that they came up with in the Espadarte. Number 6, the Galera wreck in Cuba. It's probably half or mid-16th century, and it's called the Galera wreck because it's in a place that is called Passa de Galera. We don't know the name of the ship. And this is a very curious and very uncommon find, because this wreck, we found it, and the first thing we found in the wreck, and we could say probably the only thing, was gold. We are talking about the wreck, which is probably the shallowest part is about 1.4 meters. So the water is here in some places of the wreck. You can stand in the rock. Half of your body is out of the water.
That will never cease to amaze me about your job. The fact that you're able to find artifacts and shipwrecks that are in such shallow waters for 300, 400, 500 years and nobody sees them, it's mind-boggling to me.
Well, not only to you, it was mind-boggling to us, because when we found the wreck during an exploration of that reef in the western coast of Cuba in the province of Pinal del Rio, we were checking all the reef, and normally what you find is cannons, anchors, ballast stones. With your trained eye, you can already recognize, but swimming over a reef and find shiny gold ingots and discs and pieces laying on the seabed, it can only look like a prank. This was the first time that happened to us, and also the last time.
Yeah, sadly.
that it happened to us. So it's not only you will be amazed for that, we were as well. So in that wreck, during the 2 or 3 years we were excavating the wreck, the only visible elements of the ship would be 4 anchors and gold and silver, because there was plenty of silver ingots as well. But when you find this amount of gold,
you forget about the silver ingots.
Yeah, silver kind of, okay. But for the appraisal, it was taken into account. We ended up, after 3 years of excavation in the wreck and the research in the surrounding area, we ended up finding also other parts of the ship. There was some artillery, very early artillery, like quite similar to the one of Ines de Soto, that we also talked about that before. And all in all, there were like about 52 kilograms of gold that were recovered in form of ingots, discs, fragments, and plenty of gold items. And also quite some silver ingots also in different shapes. So that's why Galera makes it to number 6 in this list. Number 5, the Princess Louisa, sunk in 1743 in the north coast of Mayo in Cape Verde. I have mentioned Princess Louisa various times in this channel because Princess Louisa was a very challenging wreck from every point of view. And it was also the first wreck I worked in Cape Verde, so I was facing at that time new conditions to work on shipwrecks, and it has been very special to me since that day. So Princess Louisa, first of all, brought a very large cargo of silver coins. There was over 40,000 silver coins, small denominations, but still most of them with numismatic value, because they still retain the information that the coins can give you, like year or mint house or assayer. So there was about a little bit over 40,000 pieces. It is also had a very peculiar cargo of elephant tusks, so ivory in big quantities. We recovered from the wreck about, if I'm not mistaken, 185 of these big tusks.
Can I ask, because I'm just curious, what is the purpose of the tusks? Sell them? What do you think?
Yeah. At the time, it was a commodity that was very sought after in Europe.
Yeah.
A lot of ornamental objects
were made out of
ivory were made. So that was one of the reasons why elephants have been butchered over the years and the centuries, because ivory, it's attractive for jewelry.
Totally. I knew a little bit about that from the 90s, from hearing it growing up, but I wondered if they had another usage back then that was why you found it on the shipwreck.
No, it was the same use as they could give today. And it is important to notice that even if the tusks and this amount of ivory was evaluated, that at that time already there was a ban, an international ban, to commercialize any type of ivory coming from elephant tusks. Or not even commercialized. You cannot even take it out of the country or export it. So yes, we got the value even of artifacts that we knew since the very beginning that would never be sold or trade or anything. So it's just the value because they are there and because they had a value.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing that come to add up to this value in the Princess Louisa is that in that wreck we recover about 14 or 15 tons of lead ingots. But something quite interesting is that this lead was identified as low alpha radiation lead. Why is this important? Because in the computer industry, to make the microchips, they use lead, but this lead has to be clean from alpha radiation. Normally the lead that is around today, and you can take it from mines, this lead absorbs a lot of alpha radiation. So lead that was mined and produced before 17 something, and it has been in the seabed for that time, it didn't acquire that amount of alpha radiation. What that means for the big industry of microchips and mobile phones and computers, that they didn't have to go through the process of cleaning the modern lead out of alpha radiation, that is an expensive process, and then use the other lead, which is low alpha radiation level, to do the microchips and everything they do. So it was attractive to them, and that put the price of the lead quite high. So in the assessment, in the appraisal of this shipwreck, then also these 15 tons of low alpha radiation lead came into the count. Number 4, Fuka, my beloved Fuka that we found in 1989 in Cuba, also in the western part of the country, in the province of Pinar del Rio. I have made a video about that, which I think is called How to Date a Wreck, because Fuka was a beautiful wreck and beautiful puzzle to solve. And we also found what is considered a very interesting treasure in the ship. There was about 7,500 silver coins, plus gold ingots. This is a very funny story about the gold ingots. I already told you that check that video because you will be amused with it. There were jewelry items. There were gemstones like emerald. There was
ornaments as well.
Yeah.
I remember from the episode.
There was a big variety
Rich.
of very rich cargo in terms of different artifacts, that it was super interesting, and that's why the Fuka wreck get very high into our list to number 4. Number 3, the São Jose, sunk in Mozambique in 1622 during a naval battle between the Portuguese and the attacking fleet, combined fleet of the English and Dutch in the province of Nampula. The São Jose was the admiral ship in the fleet of 1622 that was going from Lisbon to Goa, India, and it was transporting a vast amount of money. It was, as I have explained before, the admiral ship and the captain ship of the fleet. It will be the Capitana, will be the first ship in the fleet, and the Almiranta will be the last ship in the fleet. In the middle, there will be the galleons and the transport ships, and these two were the biggest ships and the better armed ships in the fleet. Therefore, they were the ones that were transporting the most important passengers, the most important values for the crown. And the São Jose, during this battle, it was sunk, it was first surrendered, and then the enemies took great part of the treasure. Just for you to have an idea how big the treasure or the amount of values that these ships were carrying. The Dutch took a big part of the treasure. The British took a big part of the treasure. The Portuguese managed to save a big part of the treasure in small boats, and the ship sank with whatever was left over. Then we arrived 300 years later, and we found whatever was left over. It ended up being around 25,000 silver coins, some of them really newly minted in the New World, that came really fast. I will make a video on that because that is super interesting. They came really fast from the New World to all the way almost to India. They didn't make it. Those didn't make it, but the rest of the ship did. And 4 beautiful bronze cannons, top of the technology of the time. So the São Jose made it to the 3rd place in this list. Number 2, the Ines de Soto wreck. There is also a video I have made on the Ines de Soto wreck, which is called Finding a Wreck by Chance. And the Ines de Soto wreck has this huge amount of silver discs or plank that they were in the beginning mistaken by lead disc. It has also quite some important amount of gold ingots and discs as well, ornaments, 13,500 silver coins, also from quite an early time, the first silver coins that were minted in the New World, which from the numismatic point of view make them very interesting and also very valuable because they are scarce, they are not that common. And also it has 2 astrolabes and part of the third one, very early artillery. All that came into the picture when the right institutions and specialists made this appraisal, and the Ines de Soto wreck make it 2 in this list. And number 1, this one is, okay, the number 1 is always special, but this one is special in many sense because it is the Subang wreck in the Java Sea in Indonesia with the largest cargo of Ming porcelain ever found so far. So just that
sentence,
just that fact, that is the largest cargo ever found, you can imply that it will be very valuable because there are plenty of pieces. We made the archaeological assessment of the wreck. We also made a calculation of the amount of artifact that she was carrying because we needed to come up with a system of sampling the wreck to understand the density of artifacts in each of the areas of the wreck. We did that and we came up with the approximate amount of artifacts in the lower side, I mean in the conservative side, of about 750,000 pieces. This is huge. The other shipwrecks which are known and studied carrying the Ming porcelain from the 17th century or late 16th century, they were in the amounts of probably 15,000, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000. And then you have a wreck that potentially would have 750,000. It's very big. And the quality of the porcelain that was transporting, okay, yes, part of it was mass production. There are individual pieces which are not that interesting from the historical point of view or artistic point of view. There are pieces which are quite crude, that they wouldn't fetch a big value in any market, but there were also exceptional pieces of the highest quality. There was a big mix. And I think the experts in Chinese porcelain, the appraisal they have to make with this ship, it should have been very complex for them. But anyway, just the sheer amount of pieces that this ship was carrying just have to make it to number 1. One important thing in this shipwreck is that from the ones I have mentioned, it's still down there. It hasn't been excavated. So you know that this number 1 is still waiting for someone to go and excavate the wreck. Well, this has been all for the video of today. I hope you guys got your question answered. I really hope that the next time that someone asks me this kind of question, I will just send them to watch the video in YouTube because it's very difficult for me to reply from my memory in terms of money, which I normally don't handle money terms when talking about underwater cultural heritage. But I hope you guys like it. If you have any other question that you want to ask, there is the comment section. I will, as usual, be checking it and replying to everyone. So stay in touch and keep on diving.